Finding Atlantis. Alright, so first off, let's show this one. Before the big continental shift of the last ice age, this is essentially what Earth should have looked like. Especially if a map, which I don't have the image here, but if there's a map, don't know if it's authentic or not, because I didn't double check, but if that map is accurate, right, of the fact that there was a landmass, an island, big island, off of the Pillars of Hercules, which is the little area between Africa and Spain. So there's where the Pillars of Hercules would be, the little gap right there. Right? So through that gap lets you go into the Atlantic Ocean, and then the Atlantic Ocean should be a big landmass, which will be Atlantis, right? And then beyond that will be the Americas, right? So this is what the world should have looked like when Atlantis existed, right? So there's the argument if Atlantis exists or not. So I wasn't trying to find Atlantis or anything like that, just because this is for my book. But of course I still had to put some information about like where Plato said Atlantis was and what it would look like, and so at least try to find, where Atlantis is supposed to be, since because the idea of the book is indirect evidence of Atlantis, not direct evidence of Atlantis, right? So finding it would be direct evidence. Finding things that point to the existence of Atlantis is the indirect evidence, right? As in, it was there, but it's not there. So an example of that is like, well, if that's where Atlantis was, right there, a big landmass, and everybody's been diving there in the mid-Atlantic and stuff like that, right, trying to find. So this is what the mid-Atlantic looks like, right off the coast of, the Pillars of Hercules, right? Well, there's no big, giant landmass. There's small landmass. There's little islands there, but there's no big one, right? Big one, like they said it's supposed to be a big one there, right next to Africa, right there next to America, right? So right there in between, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, is where Atlantis should be. But as you can see from the satellite image, it doesn't seem to be much there. It seems to be very little there. So then it's like, well, Atlantis, people will be like, well, it was destroyed in a big catastrophe, blah, blah, blah. It's like, fair, destroyed, equals, it's going to be less of what was supposed to be there and there. So it's like, okay, if it was destroyed and it sank, blah, 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 okay. We should, in that area, at least find, some evidence of whatever is left over, or at least evidence of the big catastrophe itself, where it's like, all right, well, Atlantis was here, but it was destroyed. Well, at least we have the proof of the destruction, right? So it's highly possible it was there. But the thing I'm trying to point out here is the fact that what if, as you can see, this crack, it goes all the way down here, south, cracks all the way up, it's going up to the North Pole. So from North Pole, South Pole, there's a big crack, which is known as the Mid-Atlantic Range. So it looks like a big crack, like the Earth cracked. And it just so happens to be where Atlantis should have been, where this big crack happened. So what if the big crack happened, the big landmass that was here didn't sink, it actually floated away. And that's where we get to the idea that what if it floated away northward, right? It went up, right? And that's where this next image comes in. What if it floated up and then it got covered in snow, and now we call it Greenland? So what if Greenland was Atlantis? Now I did a little bit of Google searching, and if looking to see if there's any archaeological sites or digs or anything, archaeology based stuff going on in Greenland, and there is some, and they found some really interesting stuff, which I'm still looking into. But it's just proving the point that's like, there's some real interesting stuff there. Definitely need to look really close at Greenland, especially with the possibility that it could have possibly been Atlantis, or just the place that Plato was referring to when he was talking about Atlantis. Now the whole story of Atlantis could be all fictional, right? Like, the details of it, of a great civilization living there and stuff, could be fictional, right? But the fact that there was a big landmass in the Atlantic Ocean that he was referring to as being a place where, there was a advanced civilization is highly possible, considering the fact that Greenland, when you look at a lot of the archaeological sites, a lot of stuff I've seen so far, they were doing some stuff. They were building things. So, building things, especially out of stone, does lead to an advanced civilization, as we've been pointing out, from Egypt and Mayans and the Aztecs and all that stuff. So if we say they are advanced because they made stone structures, can't say that people from Greenland, in the past wasn't advanced if they're making stuff out of stone, right? So something to look further into. So many things I want to say, but I just wanted to point out the fact that it's possible that that Atlantis, or at least the story of Atlantis, was inspired by or referring to Greenland, and maybe it was called Atlantis in the past. Because when was Greenland called Greenland? Did Plato know about Greenland? Did Plato refer to Greenland as Greenland, or was it called Atlantis originally, and Greenland was Atlantis? So there's so again, even if there was Plato was making up a story, he still based it off of some facts, based off of something that he can. Because in order to make a story that is meant to be an example of something, you have to use something that people can understand as an example. You can't tell people, oh, there's an island and there's boat and they have boats and this, that, and third, and people be like, what's an island? What's a boat? What's a civilization? So you can't just. It's not like every detail is made up. Is what I'm saying. It's like, to make up a story, you need a lot of truths, right? You need a lot of things that people can understand. Be like, oh, I know what a boat is. Oh, I know what an advanced civilization is. Oh, I know what language is. I know what an island is. I know what 3 concentric circles is, right? So I said he gave a lot of information. Just like you have to know what the Pillars of Hercules is, right? And so forth and so forth. You need to know what the Atlantic Ocean is. So that's why it's this idea of no, Atlantis is completely fictional. It's like, that's implying that every detail is so fictional that no way it could exist in real life. No way can an island exist, because islands don't exist, but islands do exist. No way a city made of 3 concentric circles. Nowhere on Earth has there ever been a 3 concentric circle structures. But Stonehenge is a 3 concentric circle structure, and there's tons of 3 concentric circle structures around the world. Even Göbekli Tepe has 3 concentric circle structures, or at least 2 concentric, at least at bare minimum, right? At least 2 circles, 1 circular wall inside another circular wall, right? So it's like, at least that. So it's like, yeah. And then you see cave paintings, 3 concentric circles, so clearly I'm looking for a whole bunch of imagery or physical evidence of the 3 concentric circles, because it's very specific, very interesting. Plato referred to Atlantis, the structure of the layout is being 3 concentric circles with a temple in the middle. And it's like, it's a very specific choice. Why wasn't it 3 concentric squares, 3 concentric triangles, or star, or some other shape? Why was it circle specifically? And why 3? What's the significance and importance of 3? Why did it be 3? Why can't it be 1 or 2, right? Why can't it be 20? So why was it 3 specifically? So it seems interesting. And then the fact that it was 3 specifically, and then you see 3 concentric circles pop up numerous times throughout all these different archaeological sites that I've been looking at. It's like, there's a big coincidence here, big huge coincidence, that everywhere in the world, everybody keeps drawing 3 circles or creates something with 3 circles. Like, what's the importance of 3 circles? Why? And why is it around the world? Why isn't it just one location? Why is it all around the world? Right? So that makes you think, right? Well, one, obviously humans travel around the world and whatnot. And in this image, as you can see, when I photoshopped and put things together, I didn't fully put everything closer, but it's the idea that a lot of this landmass was close at one point. You might have heard of Pangea. A lot of the landmass look like they used to go together like a puzzle piece. So there's a possibility that there was a time where America, South America, Africa, and Greenland were connected. Because something you would notice that if you look into archaeological sites and information out